Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Slow Art Friday. Today is July 31st. My name is Christy McMillan. I'm the Director of Learning and Engagement here at the Asheville Art Museum. And I'm pleased to be joined by Sarah Reincke, one of our master docents, who will lead today's conversation. Each Friday at 12 p.m. while the museum is closed, docents lead virtual interactive conversations about a few artworks in our collection or special exhibitions. The goal is simple: slow down, discover the joy of looking at art, and talk about the experience with others. For today's program, Sarah will lead us in an interactive conversation about 3 artworks in our collection. We'll spend about 15 minutes or so with each artwork. Sarah will allow us time to look at each work on our own, slowly, before leading a conversation about each one with questions. As participants, we encourage you to engage in dialogue with Sarah, myself, and each other throughout the hour. Just a few notes before we get started. You probably noticed as you were getting logged in that your microphones and video were muted by default. If at any time you'd like to unmute your video, please do so. We love to have a conversation and see who we're talking to, and now I can be seen, which is very happy. So please do feel free to turn on your video if you feel comfortable with that. For best audio and visual, please do choose a quiet room and close the door. Please silence any alerts from any nearby devices. If you do want to have on your video, try not to sit in front of a window, lamp, or other strong light source, as it affects our ability to be able to see you. Use headphones and microphone for best sound quality. While you can log in using a smartphone, we do recommend using a desktop, laptop, or tablet to see slides and meeting tools on a larger screen. Make sure that your screen name includes your first name and last initial, or first name and last name, again, so that as you're making comments and asking questions, we know who to respond to. There are a couple ways to ask questions or make comments throughout the program. Here in a minute, you will be able to unmute your microphone when Sarah or I ask for questions or comments. You can also type any questions or comments that you have into the chat box. A third way is to raise your hand in the participant sidebar, and either Sarah or I will call on you and unmute your microphone when there's a lull in the conversation. I can say that there are very often no lulls in the conversation for Slow Art Friday, so please do feel free to unmute your microphone when Sarah or I ask for questions or comments. Just a final note, we are recording, so if you prefer not to be recorded, please make sure that your video and audio remain muted and use the chat box to submit questions or comments. At this time, I'm going to make it so that folks can unmute themselves. Please do leave your microphone muted unless you're actively asking a question or making a comment. Does anybody have any questions before we get started?
How do we start the video?
Who asked me that?
Mel or Ann?
Mel, let's see.
My husband's helping me with the computer.
Alrighty, so I just sent you a request to start your video.
Oh,
and there you are, Mel. Alrighty. Anybody else need any technical assistance or have any other questions? Alrighty. Sarah, what will we be talking about today?
Well, we're going to be talking about the fact that every picture tells a story. And we were kicked off with some very appropriate music, so that's fun. The 3 thematic questions we'll be talking about much more, but the 3 thematic questions are: what are these people's stories when you're looking at the different pieces? And what kind of emotions are part of these stories? And finally, what question might you ask the artist if you had that opportunity? So I want to thank you all for coming. I always enjoy these programs, and I hope that you will too. And I think with that, Christy, we are ready for the first piece. So as Christy mentioned in the beginning, that just take a look at it for about 10 seconds. Active viewing. So what do you think's going on? What do you first initially see when you look at this piece? It is a small scale sculpture.
I see angel and devil,
You see,
because obviously with the horns, and I'm also struck almost maybe due to astrology, split personality, maybe a Gemini.
mm-hmm. Good. So we kind of see a split personality because of the two heads, and a sense of good and evil because of the horns. What else?
I see a childlike figure. And also initially it was like the angels on one shoulder and the devils on the other.
And the childlike figure, what do you see that makes you say that?
Maybe the short arms, the big space between the bottom part, the torso, and the upper part of the body. Perhaps the way the figure is standing, and less definition in the legs.
Yes. So we have some body parts that look more young, not youthful, just not quite grown up yet. Is there anything else about that body shape and proportion that somebody might want to mention?
It does look proportion. The arms are.
Barbara?
What did she say?
I said it does look out of proportion. The arms are very short, and the torso is very long. I don't know. It just doesn't, and it seems like her breasts are a little bit high up towards her neck. It's not a realistic representation.
Okay.
But the breasts also imply a mature, physically mature anyway. Maybe not. Maybe that's the struggle.
Sarah?
Okay. So we have proportion issues on the torso. We see that it's extra long. The arms look a little bit short and maybe skinny, and the legs were mentioned as well.
Sarah?
Yes.
I don't know if that's an Adam's apple, but it certainly looks like it on the neck. It looks like a representation. And so I think I really don't know what to think about it, but I think that looks like an Adam's apple there. So could this be, and also the thickness in the ankles.
Yes.
Are they in some way insinuating that this is male, female, and everything dual?
Everything dual, and maybe gender non-conforming.
Yes.
So we have a duality here, not only of good and evil, as somebody mentioned, and we can go into that a little bit more later, but also a duality in perhaps gender.
Yes.
And I think so. In addition to the Adam's apple, are there other things that make you that feel that there is a gender duality?
Well,
And I think somebody mentioned the legs too.
Yeah,
Well,
her
right.
attire. Also, her attire is, you know, it's a bikini, and it looks like she's standing in high heels. So that states a message as well.
And what about the color of the bikini and shoes? Does that particular color represent anything or bring emotion to mind?
The color's more feminine and almost like on fire, but I was noting it almost looks like hair on the side with the devil's horn, like there's long brown hair, where on the left side, more male crew cut, I get the sense in that. And I also see Barbie doll proportions where it's...
Yes, so we're getting this duality, and Are there, as you look at the faces, are there differences? Do you see any differences?
The eyebrows on the left side seem to almost touch, which would be something similar to a male might deal with more so than a female. And another thing is the lack of full-bodied hips in comparison to equalize to such full breasts.
Okay, that's great. So what can we say about, in addition to the duality, and I think that that's a wonderful topic for this sculpture, what can we say about the facial expressions?
Very distressed.
Very distressed. And do the mouths look the same?
No.
The devil, the one with the devil horns, it's just slightly turned down towards a frown, and then the one without the horns maybe slightly turned up, like the beginning of a smile.
Like the beginning of a smile. And what about the horns being white?
The horns being white are sort of, again, a duality, because white representing maybe angel, but the fact that they're horns representing devil. And I see the facial lips as being pensive.
On the face on the right side or the left?
I think both. I think they both look pensive, maybe in thought and trying to figure out this duality.
And the duality part is I just find so interesting. Is there a major player in that duality? Like more male than female, or more female than male?
I'd like to take that if I could.
Yes.
I think that they're really and truly, the short arms are much more feminine. I think in my mind, there is such a jumble that I think there's, what they really want you to see is almost as if the head is shaking and one has a horn and the other. But if you look at the eyes and the mouth on the left-hand side, that almost looks like she's looking at something fearful, or he is looking at something fearful. And if you look on the right, I agree with the pensive. But I think the other side, but that could be because the angle of the eyes that we're looking at, so the way that it was carved.
A couple of
go ahead. I'm sorry, Bill.
A couple of unrelated thoughts that are coming up for me. One is a possible reference to Adam and Eve. The other thing that this sculpture reminds me of is some African sculpture. Disproportionate limbs, almost a statuesque feeling. There's a lot of African art that deals in duality, and the importance of fertility and even twins in certain African cultures. Final thought is, when I first looked at the figure on the right, I did think horns, but the more I looked at it, I wondered if it was an incomplete halo. And there's a lot of ambiguity, of course.
There is. So, so do you think that the artist is expressing an idea about a woman? And if she is, if he is, it's a, Mr. Rogers is a he. If he is, what do you think that he's expressing or alluding to or giving us a jumping off point to?
How complicated women are.
Mm-hmm. And this is Billy. My camera isn't working. I thought that initially when I did some research on the artist, he was very engaged.
Oh, now don't give anything away, Billy.
I won't. I promise. I promise. But he was very engaged in portraying satanic figures, or what we would see as satanic figures, which is not unusual in that culture.
Right. So what would be, and I'm going to have to close out a little bit because I want to make sure that we have time for the other pieces, but a couple more things. Again, this is very small. This is a 14 3/8 by 4 by 2.5 inches. It's not very big. If you, what is one word that you would react? If you were to just use one word to express your reaction to this piece, what would it be? And we can either throw those into the chat room or do a little popcorn. And if the thought, anxiety is one, duality, thank you.
Confused.
2 is 1, and what was that?
Confused.
Confusion. Conjoined twins, these are all great. Conflict, wonderful, wonderful. All right, and what would you ask Mr. Rogers if you could ask him about this particular piece? Who am I? Yeah.
My question would be, do you have a similar figure portraying a woman or a man? I mean, do you just do these dual figures portraying women, or do you do them portraying men as well?
Great, great. Are there others?
Well, I would say, what was his inspiration for doing this? Was there something in his life, in somebody's life? What was the observations that he saw that led to him doing this?
That's good. That's good.
I would say, did you have a girlfriend that really had a dual personality? And is this something that you sat down one night after having a particularly bad night?
Right. Was your girlfriend Sybil?
No.
So is this a piece that you'd like in your home?
No.
Okay, I love honest answers. You know, there's always some on both sides. I see some head shaking going, nope, nope, nope. Kathy says, yeah, I want it. So, and it kind of could be like an evil eye, you know. Sultan Rogers is the artist, and he is an African-American. Thanks you, Christy. He is an African-American born in Mississippi in about 1922. His dad was a whittler, so that's where he learned to carve, but he just did it as a hobby for years. And his mom was a quilter. So he got married in he got married in 1941, had 10 kids. That's, yeah, I wonder what time, when this was created, right? Like a child number 8. He's going crazy. They finally settled in Syracuse in 1952, and in 1970, he took a job at Allied Chemical, and it was a night job. So that's when he really started carving again. And all of his figures are exaggerated. They're kind of bizarre. The women are always big-breasted and in tight clothing, and the men are often portrayed in snappy tuxedos and dressed to the nines. And he started carving these during his 3rd shift, and they'd be on his desk, and his coworkers started to steal them. And he got a little upset about that. So he started carving his figures in coffins, and then nobody would take them. And he left them alone. And then he got the idea of only showing the torso, and the rest of the coffin was a secret compartment. And it was a sign, kind of like to keep the haints away. He was very interested in good and evil. He devils, demons, and he wanted to ward off the haints, which is a Southern word for ghosts. And he was very, very, say that again, honey?
Haunt.
Haunt?
It's another word saying haunt, H-A-U-N-T.
Yes, and this one spelled H-A-I-N-T. And so he was very superstitious. Sultan Rogers said that he carved human figures based on people he met in his travels and by his dreams, which he called futures. So let's just hope that this woman was in his dreams and not somebody he met that was that confused. And he retired. He moved back to Mississippi after he retired from work in 1984 and stayed there until his death in 2003. And he is a self-taught artist. So any closing comments before we move on?
His work is collected at several museums, including the Smithsonian.
Yes.
And the Smithsonian has taken great pride in owning his work.
And there is also a museum in Mississippi that has about over 150 pieces of his work. Okay. Shall we move on to the next piece? And again, let's just take a peek at this guy. So this is a great example of a piece of artwork that the more you look, the more you see. And so let's just study it for a little bit, and then we can start the discussion. So what do you what pops out when you first look at this? Where are your eyes drawn?
I first see the face, the eyes, and what looks like a beak. And to me, it looks sort of like an owl. And I start to see claws and hands throughout.
So Lauren, you're going from the top down, right?
Yes.
You are looking at the top of the picture, which is where you see an owl-like figure. You see eyes and ears, a beak?
Yes, feathers, yes.
And feathers. And then and as you move down, do you begin to see, do other people see other things?
It looks like someone is
a man's face.
Sorry.
Holding a butterfly on his finger.
Holding a butterfly.
And his look on of one does not look as if he's, really happy about the butterfly. It looks, one side of his face looks a bit stricken, but it's quite unusual.
To me, it is. Hi, this is Micah. To me, it looks like someone in prison.
It looks like. And what do you see that makes you say that?
It looks just, the expression on the face of just despair, and
of the man.
The hands coming around the bars. And that the butterfly or creature on the person's finger is, to me, a symbol of hope.
There's a cross in that butterfly as well.
There is.
Yeah, and below the prominent face To me, it looks like the bottom of a nose and lips way at the bottom.
Way at the bottom.
I would agree.
And what is the shape of what does that mouth look like? Is it a happy mouth?
Oh, then I guess it's a frown. But the whole thing is like a totem for me, like a totem pole. There are so many different images of vertical.
Or a headdress.
A headdress.
Yes.
I think, and the headdress kind of leads, I mean, there's, you know, when headdresses are used, stories are often involved with a number of different cultures, not just the Native Americans. So what about like the contrasts? It's just black and white. The dark, what do the heavy dark portions create for you?
I'm drawn to the darkness and the light and the thickness of the strokes. In the one hand on the bottom, there's a lot of lines and very thin lines and then thick lines. And I think it just gives the idea of texture and some sort of power to the black and white areas.
So yes, the lines on the hand with the butterfly, there's a repetition there. And we have a comment about fur or feathers. And so the bold black areas on both sides of the face and up a little bit towards the top of the woodcut. How does that black affect the impact of this piece?
Somebody said bars or imprisoned, and I think it's very restrictive. It's like creates a barrier. It's almost as if whatever that figure is, if it's a totem, a headdress, whatever, is behind these bars.
Or it's a deep space that the figure's sort of lost in.
Yeah.
Or a sort of hesitation or apprehension of whatever it is that may be representative of life itself, that I can see in the lower part where the bigger face is, looking at the eyes there, it just seems to be staring kind of almost like with a dead stare. And so maybe that kind of apprehension about life itself, apprehension about whatever story is being told.
Okay, and Maria, when you make the comments about the eyes and the stares, are you talking about all of the eyes that you see, or just the top or the bottom?
Well, the one that really caught my attention was the one at the bottom because of the definitive blackness in the eyes, and that was what stood out for me. But as going upwards, I can see even more that combined with all of the eyes in, well, what we're seeing in all three parts of the picture itself, that there's that kind of a dead stare or just fixated on something.
So is that very bottom, at the very bottom, right in the center, that looks almost like a woman's eye to me. And suggests
more. Okay, tell me where you're looking again.
I'm looking at the very bottom, right in the center. Beneath the what appears to be a man's face, there is a down, and a little to the right.
Oh, so the mouth. Okay.
It could be a mouth. See, when I saw it, it looked almost like a woman wearing, I'm thinking of a virginal kind of, Virgin Mary kind of figure is what it struck me as.
Well, and the lines right below that, and that area has, for some people, it looks like a portion of another face, that it might be a frown, but also as far as an eyebrow and a closed eye, it It does look like there are little eyelashes at the bottom of it.
Yeah.
So again, you get to make multiple comments, and it can be fluid. You know, one minute you can see something, and the other minute you'll see something else. And that brings me to a very fun word that was a little bit new to me, and I use this word often because on hikes, I like seeing unusual impressions, particularly in trees, where it might be a face or something like that. And that word is called, I want to say it correctly, pareidolia. And that is the act of seeing faces in inanimate objects like tree trunks or
clouds,
rock, or in a cloud, right? And I think that this is certainly struck me as something that would fit in the pareidolia line.
May I contribute a comment?
Yes.
This is Micah. So when I literally pulled back from the image, I see a divot in the chin because I have one myself. But, you know, below the person, yes, that to me, if you literally pulling back physically, it looks like a divot in the chin.
So,
of the man.
Yes. Like
to me, the bottom looks unfinished. Like it's very detailed at the top and the ears, and I almost even see wing on the left side, but the bottom just looks like it just ended and wasn't completed.
Yes, a tailsman.
Sarah, look at the right-hand side, more up, just if you're looking up closer to the face and come down a bit, go up more on the, keep going straight up. Go to the shoulder area of the bird. Keep going on the other side.
Right, okay.
Go all the way over to the edge. Follow that down. That looks like a primate, like a mandrill. It looks like the overhanging eyelid, the nose, that's the eyelid.
I see.
Oh my gosh, yes.
There's his mouth right there.
That's right. And that is very much like the mandrill that has red in next to the nose. It's a large primate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, what great use of your words as far as directing us to a specific spot. I love that. Do we see a difference in the eyes of what might be the headdress, the owl-like figure, and the eyes of the person below?
I see, I want to talk about the person below for a minute. On the black line, the black on to his, well, we're looking at the left side of his face.
Okay.
That part is very dark. Mm-hmm. And on the right side, it's on the right side of his face, right? It's very, not his face, his hand, the right side of his hand. It's very light. And his eyes match the lightness and the darkness of those.
Oh, I see.
Whatever that is that's hanging down.
Yeah,
so it's maybe I saw it initially as a shroud, and the darkness to the shroud is very depressing, and maybe there's a little bit of hope in the airiness of the paint of the strokes on the right side.
Yeah, I see. That's very interesting. And so, do you think that does the expression on the animal and the eyes in particular express the same feeling as the person's eyes beneath the owl?
The eyes on the owl are actually more real. I mean, you can see the iris and you can see the eyelid, but it's very soulful. It's looking down, and the eyelid's halfway down. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost more real, but it is it's has more soul to it, where the other one, the below, looks empty.
Yes.
Sort of drained, possibly.
Yes. Yes. And someone said the eyes on the owl look more assured than the eyes on the man. Yes, the eyes on the man, as people have said, kind of look worried or despair, desperate, so maybe a little scared. But the eyes on the owl don't express that same desperation.
Do you think that it looks like they're looking in two different directions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In each case of the so-called faces, one eye is dark and the other is light. The upper face, the eyes are more circular, and the face below, they're more oval. If your theme were duality, we found something.
Right. Well, it's a story, but yes, I agree.
Sarah?
Yes.
Yeah, what I find remarkable overall is when I first saw this, I just wanted to see the shape versus the positive versus the negative space all around in the background. And it's remarkable how much we've been finding in this. You would expect it almost to be detailed like an Escher, but it's very, very, very free and loosely drawn for a singular shape on a large white background. Mm-hmm. It's remarkable.
And it is. And what can we say about the choice of animal that might be on this headdress or sitting on this person's head?
I get the feeling that it's like a spirit animal. Like gentleman on the bottom, or the figure on the bottom, is so frightened, but he's trying to portray himself in a different way, and he's trying to come through this owl who might be a stronger figure. It just feels like he's hiding behind the owl. He's frightened, and the owl isn't quite strong enough to be brave. I don't know. It's just.
The owl is also a figure of intelligence, wise. Mm-hmm. And so is he hiding? Is he afraid of his own wisdom?
So, and I do have a story to tell at the end. And that was a great lead-in, Kathy, but I'm not going to go quite there yet.
Okay.
But it is interesting that the owl, we think of the owl as wisdom, nocturnal, strong, and yet the figure, and does the figure have a gender in your mind?
Male, probably.
Male?
Just mainly because we don't see the hair, and so, but the hands also have a size quality that's more male.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
Does anybody see the person doing the tango?
Yes, to the left.
Oh, to the left or to the right?
To the opposite side where you are.
Yep, up here.
The other side. Follow up to where the mandrel was.
Up here.
Going right there.
In there.
Right there. Yeah. Right there.
She looks like
there's
she
her leg.
She's twirled by the man with his arm around her and has lifted her on his hip. And
my!
Wow.
Who said the tango? Was that you, Mel?
Yes, it was me.
Yeah. I do see the girl. I don't see the guy.
No,
I don't either.
But you can see his arm, and
it's around her waist.
Right.
He has her up on his hip and is twirling her around. There's a specific move for that tango movement, and that looks just like what the woman looks like from the back.
Wonderful.
Move, and
that's great.
And I do want to bring, I don't know if we all noticed, but somebody had mentioned that the owl looks like he's carrying a talisman.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very interesting That's a very interesting piece. And I also kind of like what is on his hand. Is there something that you would like to ask this artist who, if you had that opportunity?
I would again ask, like as Marie did in the last one, what the inspiration was for this. I mean, owls can fly, butterflies can fly, yet it's just very intriguing.
So, and is there anything else that somebody would like to add about this piece?
Yeah, I see the owl as alert and looking towards the future.
Mm-hmm.
I see the face on the bottom, not very happy about what he sees about the present.
Right, he's a little nervous.
Anybody ever see the Birdman of Alcatraz? Well, if you saw, I look at it as he is in a quandary about something, but something when the butterfly flew into whatever space he's in and lit on his finger, suddenly his focus shifted to the wonder of it all.
So, and I think that that's a perfect lead-in, Mel. This is, and you can go ahead and switch to the title. Yeah, this is called Blindsman Bluff. And I'll get a little bit into the artist, but it is a woodcut on paper, again, not that big. And it is telling us a story, a mythological story. And it is the story of Psyche. And I'm gonna read this. And this is, I actually found, as often you do, there's always more than one rendition about mythological stories. But this is the one that I thought was most appropriate from the reading that I did and the mention of Psyche in some of the articles that I read. So Aphrodite was jealous of Psyche. She was a beautiful, beautiful woman. So she sent her son, Eros, to Earth to put a spell on Psyche, making men not want to marry her because Aphrodite was jealous and she didn't like Psyche. So so Eros, who always wanted to obey his mom, he was an obedient child, did put a spell on Psyche. But he made an error and also pricked her with one of his arrows, which made her fall in love at first sight with Eros. So Eros felt bad and he accidentally pricked himself. So they're in love, but Eros is trying to obey his mother. So he made it so that no man would want to marry her, but she would find happiness. So, of course, Psyche's parents were destroyed. They were hoping for a very, very successful, rich marriage. And that wasn't going to happen. But they heard about this monster that would be willing to marry Psyche. So Psyche goes up to this mountaintop and finds the monster. And the monster is actually Eros. So this signifies, this is the story of the monster. And it gives that kind of happiness, sadness duality. They do marry, but he doesn't get to show himself to his loved one. And he is always the monster, which kind of brings us back to what is he holding on his finger as far as a ray of hope, the ray of somebody that he really loves. And so I thought that it was an interesting story. And even the title, Blind Man's Bluff, because Psyche did not know that it was her true love, that she had actually married. So I thought that that made a very, very good story. The gentleman, there's another kind of fun factoid. The artist, William R. Lidd, he graduated from the University of Wisconsin, taught high school, taught at the Illinois State University, and finally ended up at Western Carolina University in like 1963. So he was at our museum doing a lecture and demonstration in the late 60s. He printed this during the demonstration and gave it to the museum. So I thought that that was a very, very fun fact. And Mr. Lidd continued to teach until 1988. But this does say it's a gift from the artist, and that's the background as to how we got it. So I thought that that was kind of an interesting acquisition. Okay, so let's go on to the last piece. And I only have about 10 minutes. Okay, so let's take a peek at this one. I do want to mention before we get started that the light greenish area you see in the upper left-hand corner is a reflection from photography. So it is not a light source or anything to do with the photograph or even that light, like, you know, the one, there's down at the bottom, there's that little white bit that's also part of the reflection. So that is not the light source. If we were to see this in the museum, it would be dark all the way to that upper left-hand corner.
So Sarah, this here, this is paint. This is all part of the painting. The the shadow is this here. You see that darker spot right there?
Oh, I see.
So it's that shadow that's the reflection from the frame. And then here and here, these are damages to the frame.
Okay.
You can see.
Oh, well, that makes me feel a lot better because I was intrigued by that light source. And when you said it was a reflection, I went back and like, oh, all right.
No, I know we're always struggling with, you know, reproductions versus the real thing that you can see in the gallery.
So, okay, so that's good. I'm glad about that. And I have actually seen this in the museum, but not for quite a while. So what stands out? What's going on here?
It looks like the tall guy has a captive audience and that he's influencing those two people. And I admit, I know the title of this is The Lobbyist, and thinking about how much influence lobbyists have in our government and have had for so many years.
It is. So is this a private conversation? Are they whispering?
I think they are whispering, and I think, or speaking lowly. Sometimes you can see if you see any films of any of the Senate or the Congress, you can see huddles of men, just groups, small groups. And usually in this picture, it makes me think the gentleman in the front that is shorter, that has a white mustache, that he has said something and they wanted to keep it a little bit quiet. And the taller gentleman, you see a pensiveness on his lips, where all thoughtfulness. And the other fellow's bent his head down as if he also is thinking about a very weighty subject, something of consequence to others.
So the perspective, are we included?
Are what?
Are we included in the perspective of this painting?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. We're seeing something that's private. And I think that the shorter gentleman with the white mustache, not the one with his back to us, the other one, my feeling, and he's the one somewhat in power. He's the one that is the wall that needs to be moved.
It looks to me like they both want his ear, almost like two different opposing opinions. And this gentleman in the center has two ears, and each of the two on the left and the right are trying to get their position across to him and influence or encourage him in their beliefs.
So, Laurel, you're to recap, it is the gentleman with his back to us who might be the major player.
Yes.
And the other two are trying to give different opinions.
Yes.
So, okay. Yeah, that's great. These are all great observations. So,
on to the light source, just when we first started discussing it about whether it was a reflection or not, immediately my eye was drawn to that left-hand corner and to the green, even before I started contemplating what the three gentlemen might be up to.
And what does that add? What does that light source add?
Depth.
Depth. That's great. Anything else?
It's the outside world. This is these guys are in the room where it happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because you see the little bit of white, like a light from under a door, even.
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by the tuxedo. It leads me to believe that this is not a conversation that's taking place in the usual place where these three men might be having this conversation. Yeah. It's a gathering of some kind, and they have gone off by themselves. There's a lot going on somewhere else. It's not immediately in this picture. I think the tuxedo really adds some interesting hints.
So what time of day do you think it might be?
Night. Nighttime? Yep.
Just because of the formal dress. So when you think of, since we know the title, I'm going to go ahead and use it. Since we know these are lobbyists, do you think that they might be taking advantage of a moment that, as Bill said, is outside their normal working office? So they're stealing a moment?
If you look at that in the left hand, the light source, it almost looks like somebody's on stage. And if you look behind the three men, it looks like those are stage curtains, and that they are getting the spill over light from the lights that are shining on the person on the stage, almost as if they were at an auction or a fundraiser. But they have gone off to talk about something very deep.
That's great, and are they at the theater? And they're taking a moment to make their point, and so let's say they are trying to make a point, and they are trying to convince this gentleman with his back to us. So how do you think he's feeling?
I think he's
welcoming. Do you think he's welcoming this conversation?
No, I feel because he seems to be looking down, like he's very concerned. It's almost as if he's both listening to what's being said, but he's also deeply in contemplation. Just the way he's holding his head. The other thing that this artist is doing very effectively here is by creating three figures with different physicalities. He's really emphasizing their possible differences of opinion.
Yes, big and small, you know, I would agree. So do you think that the largeness of the man on the left has an effect on how we might think the conversation is going? And many of us had mentioned that the person on the right, the man with the mustache, might be the influencer. But I like the whole size discussion of size.
Interesting that someone brought up the fact that this could be a stage curtain, which
Yes.
brings a different definition of lobby.
Oh, that's good too.
Ooh.
So yeah, so that's excellent. So maybe they're in the lobby.
Well, and maybe it's not political at all.
So
I was trying to figure out who is speaking because I think that the tallest gentleman, you would think he would be the most dominant, strongest, and he does seem strong, but that gentleman on the right in the back seems very, very solid. And so, and I think that the previous comment that Bill made about the gentleman who's shorter with his back to us is intently listening.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking that the man on the tallest man on the left is the speaker. But I'd be curious what others think.
Well, are we able to see the mouth of the man, the tall man?
Yes, I see.
Barely.
Barely.
That tells
so the other gentleman does look like his mouth is closed, the one with the mustache.
Right.
And he's intently looking at the taller guy.
Yes.
But the mouth of the tall guy looks like he is thinking in contemplating, and looks sometimes when you think, nope, I don't know what to think about this, nope. That's what his lips look like. And, you know, the other fellow is trying to change his mind.
Because his lips look pursed?
Yes.
Yes. So let's talk about the frame. Does the frame influence this picture? If it were a skinny metal black frame,
yeah,
would it look different? Go ahead, Marie.
I was just saying the way that the frame is done makes it look as if it's a window and that we are peering through this window into what is going on in the lobby or the area that they're talking about. Right. And so we're getting a view looking on inside, an informal discussion that is happening based on the fact that they're in tux during a formal event or activity itself. So we're getting a chance to look into seeing what's going on.
That's right. We are at 12:59. We could talk forever. It's like we all need to lobby for longer slow arts. No.
Yes.
But at any rate, if you'll show the artist information, Christy. So it is the Lobbyist, and this again, it's a small piece. It was created in his first exhibition, Mr. Gabosh, first exhibition was in 1913, and the Lobbyist is fairly early on in his career. He was part of the Ashcan group, and he was also a teacher, a highly regarded New York teacher who authored How to Draw the Human Figure, which I thought was kind of interesting. He also worked with silver and glass, and he designed a United States stamp for the Treasury Department, as well as greeting cards. So he stayed busy as an artist and kind of ventured into many, many different areas. He's gifted in portraying everyday events of the working class and translating their ordinary daily routines into something extraordinary to look at. Now, I don't know that this would necessarily be dubbed as working class, but he certainly does transform it into something that is extraordinary to look at. In 1980, the Smithsonian had a retrospective of his work, and he was still alive. And that was very, very unusual for the Smithsonian. So I think that a lot of the people appreciated his talents. It is just now a little after 1, and I want to say I'm so sorry. I want to go back and read all the chats. You guys were fabulous. 78. So I want to read all those comments.
Thank you, Sarah, as always. Completely interesting conversation. I can say that I've seen at least the Sultan Rogers and the grayback painting more than the print that we looked at the second time. But I always see something new and have new thoughts and reactions to the artworks every time we feature them in a Slow Art Friday. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you to all of you for your thoughts and your questions. Next week, our topic is Art with an Attitude, and our docent is Michelle Weitzman-Dorf, one of our touring docents, who will be leading that conversation. If you're interested in joining us, please send me a quick email so that I can add you to the list and send you the login information. Hopefully my computer will work and send it to you Thursday evening, which is when I usually send it rather than Friday morning. So I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Great questions you ask.